Hi friends, I hope you're doing well. So a few days ago I released an episode on Lorde and the Great Gatsby, and this is one of my favorite episodes that I've released recently, and so I wanted to give you a little behind the scenes into how I make an episode like that. So obviously all episodes have to start with an idea or a concept. The concept for this one I'd used before, comparing a modern pop song with classic literature. So I'd done this with Taylor Swift and Shakespeare. And the idea for this was, okay, what other pop songs do I love and what other classic literature do I love and how do I compare the two? And obviously one of the things that came to mind was Lorde's Green Light and how it's been connected to the Great Gatsby. So at this point, I have my two pieces of media that I want to discuss, and I have my concept of how to analyze them and compare them, but then I have to think of a thesis. And this, I think, is the hardest part of the episode, coming up with what I actually want to say. It's all well and good to analyze something and compare it, but you have to present a theory or an idea that you want to contribute to the conversation. So at this point, I have to think of what I actually want to say. Sometimes the thesis comes really naturally and it's very obvious to me, and then sometimes I have to dig a little deeper. For the Green Light episode, it came pretty quickly. I knew what I wanted to say. For me, often the thesis starts with a question and then my conclusion answers the question, hopefully. So my question for the Green Light was, why is it important that we analyze and compare Lorde's song with The Great Gatsby, even though Lorde's song is not about The Great Gatsby? What about that connection is important? I keep all of my ideas on a big Word document. Most of them are incoherent at this stage. I'll have the question that I want to answer in bold at the top and then all of my scattered thoughts underneath it. And then once I have the idea of what I want to say, I write out a plan of what I need to include in the episode. As you can see, this is my checklist for the Green Light episode. So it began with rereading and annotating The Great Gatsby. Then I had to write about the history of The Great Gatsby. I had to write a synopsis. I had to analyze it. And then it's broken up into two parts. And then I had to do all the same for Lorde's song. The history of the song, the synopsis and analysis, and then a comparison of the two texts, and then my thesis. And then once I know what I need to do, I go into research mode. And I always do this when I come up with a new idea, a new comparison, analysis, thesis. I always Google to see if someone else has done it first. If I find that someone has done the exact same thing as me, that doesn't stop me from making the episode. I just read the thing or watch the thing or listen to the thing, take notes, and I use it as reference material in my own episode. For the Green Light episode, most articles or reviews about the song Green Light mentioned the connection to The Great Gatsby, and some of them had mini comparisons within those reviews, but none of them were full-on essays comparing the two. While I'm in research mode, I make sure to keep track of all the links that I visit, all the quotes that I use, where they're from, who said them, because if there's one thing high school taught me, it's to start on your bibliography while you're writing. Here is my bibliography for the Green Light episode. I didn't use all of these quotes or all of these links, but they were all helpful in writing the episode. And then really, the next thing I do is I just write it. And that's often the hardest part, when I'm researching and writing down sketchy notes. I always have this grand idea of what it's going to be in my head. And then when I sit down to actually write the episode, I get so bogged down with all this pressure to make it as good as I want it to be, or as good as it exists in my head. But really, I just have to sit down and write the damn thing. I don't always write the episodes in chronological order from beginning to end. I tend to jump around a lot, depending on what's easy and what's hard. The easiest parts to write are always the historical context parts, because that's just fact and I can just write it down in a clear and concise way. The hardest parts to write are always anything that includes my own opinion, like the conclusion and the thesis, because then I have to convey what I want to say. After I've written a first draft, I'll obviously go through it. Sometimes I write a second draft. For Green Light, I didn't. I was pretty happy with my first draft and just cleaned it up a bit. For Shakespeare and Taylor Swift, though, I went through multiple drafts of that script before I really figured out what I wanted to do with it and what I wanted to say with it. And then after the writing stage, we obviously go into the techie stage with recording and editing, and then writing all the notes and references out for the blog and all of that stuff. But for me, one of the most exciting things about the whole process is writing, because I just love writing essays. These episodes always take the most time to create, the most energy, because it's all about researching, fact-checking, polishing, refining. It's basically just writing a school paper, which I love. I've always loved writing essays, but the thing that I love about the process of writing for the podcast is that I can make it personal to me in a way that I couldn't in high school. I can add personal anecdotes, I can change my thesis to fit me, I can choose what I want to discuss and talk about. And so I really love this process, and it's nice to share with you how it gets to the episode that you end up listening to.